Look, it's all about Erdogan. I think he feels very threatened because for the first time there is a political party that has come out against him that is functioning well. I mean, CHP until last year, until Özgür Özel took it over, until İmamoğlu took over Istanbul, it was a political party that never won, right? Kılıçdaroğlu lost what? How many elections? 4, 9, 30, right? So he was very comfortable with a Kılıçdaroğlu type CHP. Sure, you can have opposition, but they're never going to win. Now, for the first time, he realized that the opposition is about to win and that he's finished. I mean, I think today, if you had free elections in Turkey, Erdogan would lose by a huge margin, like Orban. There is no difference between, I think, him and Orban in that sense. İmamoğlu, we saw how popular he was. I mean, and the other thing about İmamoğlu is, remember, Erdogan was also the mayor of Istanbul, right? So he really saw İmamoğlu as a threat. He thought he got rid of İmamoğlu as a threat, but he realized that Özgür Özel is continuing the fight, and Özgür Özel is actually quite capable too. We don't know how this operation is going to end, right? It remains to be seen because you see that Kılıçdaroğlu and Erdogan are working in tandem. You see that they're not going to let Özgür Özel take over the party. So Özgür Özel will have a very difficult choice to make whether or not to start another political party or take over, like SHP, take another political party and reconstitute it. But you know, Erdogan is a master bureaucrat. He is going to find ways to delay him, ways to undermine him until such time as there are early elections, and make sure that the new party will not have enough support, we don't know. But on the other hand, we should also remember that the Turkish public has had enough of Erdogan. 2024 municipal elections, we saw it was a major success for CHP, something that CHP hasn't done in decades, right? So it is quite possible that something unusual will happen, that there will be major opposition emerge on the streets. Look, he was very threatened by Gezi. Why? Gezi happened 2 years after the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring overthrew government after government. He shouldn't have been afraid. I mean, he was fairly popular, Erdogan, in 2013, but he's so insecure, right, that he cannot take a chance. But he realizes that there is a lot of opposition. Plus, the economy is not in good shape, right? Partially because of the war in Iran, but also because he has managed the economy well recently. And at the end of the day, people want food on the table. This is actually a very good question. Unfortunately, the government of the United States, Mr. Trump in particular, likes Erdogan very much, but he likes just about every dictator. Remember, he supported Orban in Hungary. He sent his vice president before the elections, and people still voted Orban out by a huge margin, right? So Trump does not care about democracy. He says it openly. You see, look, I used to work in the State Department. I mean, we paid a huge amount of attention to human rights. And now it's not mentioned anymore. Democracy, human rights are not words that are being used by the State Department. We used to have human rights reports. They're gone, right? So the problem is that Trump, even if Erdogan were to go out in the streets and kill people, Trump will not do anything, right? And so, unfortunately, this is in America that none of us recognize it anymore. And we have another 3 years of Trump. Even if another Republican wins in the next election, you will see that it will change, because this is making many congressmen and many senators very unhappy and very resentful of what Trump is doing. But Trump is so powerful with the rank and file that they can't do anything. But there is a great deal of disenchantment within the party about these political issues. But they're not willing to take Trump on this. Well, we saw that the ambassador Trump has appointed to Turkey, who's also the ambassador for Syria and now ambassador for Iraq, clearly took sides with a former Islamist terrorist against the Kurds who fought with the United States. He changed policy on the Kurds. He's not supporting the Kurds anymore. And for him, Kurds, you probably have not met him, but Trump likes to identify people as, oh, you are Mr. Kurd. He likes to joke about things. But to him, the Kurds mean nothing. He doesn't know a single thing about the Kurds. You're saying what has changed. I don't think anything has changed. Trump was like that always, except that he's now more pronounced than he was during his first term. During his first term, he had to be careful. He's going to run for re-election, and he was new to the job. Now he feels very confident, right? He thinks he can do anything he wants, just like Erdogan in a way, and he kind of likes authoritarians. He likes Putin. He likes Xi. He likes Modi, right? And so, big guys. And Erdogan is one of those big guys. So he has an affinity towards Erdogan. I can't explain it, right? But on the other hand, he makes policy. And unfortunately, the Kurds have to be very careful. It's possible. I don't know what Barak thinks about all of this. We have a few signs. He seems to think that the Middle East is basically Iraq, Syria, and Turkey. Everybody else is unimportant, right? Tell that to the Egyptians. I'm sure they're not very happy. But so I don't know how much it is Barak or Trump who's making policy. Now, Iraq has a structure. Iraq, yes, things are really very tense within Iraq, but Barak must realize also that if things really go south or bad in Iraq, it will have repercussions everywhere. Because Iraq, it's close to Jordan, it's close to Israel, it's close to Saudi Arabia. So, the repercussions can be very, very serious. What we don't know yet is what the reaction of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the Gulf countries is to all of this. And I think that will be much more determinative. Look, I think generally in this town, in Washington, and within US Congress and US government, there's a great deal of sympathy for the Kurds. Americans have worked with Iraqi Kurds and then with Syrian Kurds. Yes, the Turkish Kurds, they have not. But the Turkish Kurds also have given up on the armed struggle and have made a great deal of progress. And if Erdogan were to start the war again, because if it starts again, it's going to be because Erdogan wants it, because the Kurds are not in a position to fight it, anymore. I think it will be taken very badly here. But any new administration coming in will remember, especially what the Syrian Kurds did for. It's very hard to forget what he did. There were thousands of American soldiers fought with the Syrian Kurds. So there is, shall we say, institutional memory, personal memories. It's just that Trump I mean, look, you have to give it to him. I mean, Trump does what he wants to do, and he gets away with it. And but things will change. The other, I mean, of course, one thing that will have to happen probably is, Trump has appointed now lots and lots of people in the administration, and their influence will have to be curtailed somehow, and you'll have to rehire new people. But things will change. I mean, look, you're seeing that already. Signs are here for. Look, I'm very conflicted about the process. I'll tell you why. On the one hand, I think it's great. It's great that there's a process, finally. Not only that you have somebody like Barkey, the arch-nationalist, who wants the process to go on. But on the other hand, I worry that Erdogan will destroy it, because he will do what is best for him in terms of his ability to stay in power. Barkey has said things about the process, but Erdogan has kind of stayed cool. He doesn't even say, I'm very happy that there's a peace process, I hope we will have peace in this country. I think it's very difficult for him to admit that there are Kurds in Turkey. Look, for a lot of Turks, I mean, you see it on social media, you see it on newspapers. I mean, for a lot of Turks, it's still hard to accept that there are Kurds in Turkey, that there are people who want to call themselves Kurds. They say, no, you're not a Kurd, you are whatever, Anatolian Turk or Eastern Turk or whatever. But so Erdogan, I think, has this, he can relate to you at an individual level. He will even hire you if you're a Kurd. He's good at those things, but conceptually, the notion of Kurdistan for him is difficult, right? And you saw how much he fought against the Syrian Kurds, right? So I'm not sure. What I worry is that Erdogan is using the process to figure out a way to get early elections so that he can run again. Because he does not have the numbers at the moment in parliament. Now, by destroying CHP, maybe he will get a number of CHP and members of parliament who side with Kılıçdaroğlu to vote for him. But I still think he needs, I don't remember the exact numbers, but he needs like 40 or 50 seats maybe. Everything he's doing is about himself. Right? I mean, and this is kind of where Trump and Erdogan share a common thread. They both are interested in themselves and their own future. That's what they care about, right? Now, for Erdogan, in a way, it's far more important because it's his legacy, etc. What Erdogan doesn't understand is that at this stage, the longer he pushes this, even if he were to win the election, his legacy is going to be negative because people are going to say he forced himself on us. That's going to be he'll be dead by then, but his family will bear the brunt of that image. That he forced himself on us, and he stayed in power, right? And look, it's been 23 years that he's been in power. He wants to stay another 28 years. Which leader? I mean, every society needs change to advance. One person cannot revolutionize a society. It's unfortunate. I mean, the irony is that Erdogan came in, and a lot of people, even I, was very sympathetic to him and what he was trying to do. He changed.